So let's look at some health partnering skills, some coaching skills. I want to spend a little more time on the listening part. Today, even in our world of social media, even in our world where we are supposed to be connecting socially, we are more isolated than ever before. On the spiritual aspect, that might be a setup to our advantage. If people are in a desert of listeners, in a desert of people who truly connect with them, and then we have the water, so to speak, to provide those elements that social connection that they're not getting, it's even more powerful than if it was readily available everywhere. Is that right? Let's take advantage of that desert of communication. As we think about listening, we don't do it well. I don't even do it well. My wife keeps me in line quite a bit. Many times after we have had people over to our house, when they leave, she asks this question almost every time: what did you learn about them? She's saying, Rick, did you do all the talking? Or did you listen? Probably not a bad question for any of us to ask ourselves. We don't necessarily need to have our wives ask the question, but ask ourselves. What it does when we are true listeners, it shows acceptance. I accept you. I want to hear from you. If I'm doing all the talking, I really don't care much about you. I just have somebody I can tell my ideas to and talk to. It helps the speaker, not the listener, so it's the person you're coaching, the speaker to feel understood and validated. Are we reflecting God's character? Showing acceptance, validated, helping others believe in themselves. Those are all the things that God does for us. As we listen, a simple thing we can do, a simple skill that can begin to show the world what God is like. What are some of the challenges to listening? Obviously, we've got challenges or we would do it pretty well, don't we? Telephones. Environmental distractions. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's too noisy. I can't hear them well. I'm getting distracted over here. Or this person was talking to me and something else draws my attention away. Multitasking. I know this has happened to many of you, and I've been guilty of this as well. You're talking to someone and they have their phone out, checking on texts. Now it's quiet, like, oh yeah, I've done that. Are we multitasking? I want to read the text at the same time I'm trying to listen. You can't listen when you're multitasking. It's time to put it away because this is the most important connection I am making. So multitasking can be a problem. Our natural tendency to problem solve. Now, how does this work? I'm listening to the person, I'm hearing problems. I start fixing it. Have I stopped listening? I got enough information and now I'm going to fix it. Physicians often have to work this way. You go into the doctor's office, he wants to hear that one problem, and then in just a few seconds, he or she is figuring out the solution to that problem, and their mind has stopped listening to any other problems that you're bringing up. Have you experienced that? Because got the problem, got to figure out the solution, don't need to listen anymore. Now I'm doing the doctoring. Shh, quiet, I'm doctoring you. Instead of, don't try to solve the problem because, first of all, they can fix it themselves. Keep listening. As you're listening, you might be making some lists of what they're telling you, but don't go to the second step of fixing it. First of all, that's not coaching. One of the big areas, we are afraid of silence. We might ask a question and there's silence. We don't like that. We got to keep talking to fill that empty sound with words and information. Just in case I don't cover it when I come to questions, let me just mention an important part of silence. If I ask you a question and there's a long pause, was that an important question? It was probably the most important question. If I ask you a question and you get an answer right back, didn't have to think much, it's surface type of stuff. Do you realize because we're afraid of silence, we are cutting off the answers to the most important questions we've asked? We have cut off the response that's the most important response just because we don't like silence. Now, it might be okay if there's a long pause. I might restate the question. It may have been there's a long pause because they didn't understand what I asked. But don't be afraid of silence where you just start filling it with noise. Just remember, by doing that, you may have cut off the most important communication, the most important answer, the most important thing that you should listen to, because that simple area of silence. Mental clutter. Did I leave on something on the stove? We have this vacation coming up. I wonder if I've made all this mental clutter happening in my mind when I'm supposed to be listening. When you sit down or you're on the phone and you start that listening process, one thing we learned in coaching was, there was one coach who he rings this bell, this before he calls, and that's a signal for him that everything else is put away. He is now in the zone to connect with this person. Just simple way of saying, nothing else is getting into my communication right now. They are the most important. I'm getting rid of the mental clutter. When it starts to come up, we have to say, they are so important. I got to listen. I want to share this aspect of the beauty of listening and see what kind of pictures you get from this. True listeners no longer have an inner need to make their presence known. You as a listener, I don't have to be making noise that I'm here. I'm just a listener. They are free to receive, to welcome, and to accept. I'm just soaking it up, not making myself be known. Listening is much more than allowing another to talk while I'm waiting for a chance to respond. See, that's all about me, if that's the case, isn't it? Oh yeah, they're talking, but I'm thinking about what I'm going to say. That's not real listening. Listening is paying full attention to others and welcoming them into my very being. I'm taking that information and they are actually being accepted into me, into my ears. Listening is a form of spiritual hospitality. It's like you're inviting someone to your home. Come on in. Spiritual hospitality by which you invite strangers to become friends. to get to know their inner selves more fully. Do you like that? Did you catch some tidbits there? You know, I think about this as we're giving all of this good information, and I'd say it's good information because somebody else gave it to me. And you're going to forget it. That's why I gave you some handouts and materials. As you find that as you interact with people, it's not quite fitting like you'd like it, go back to those things. Go back to that material and say, I remember what I'm doing wrong. I remember how important it is for the listening. In fact, listen until you no longer exist. Is that a little hard to do with our selfishness? Listen until you no longer exist. It's all about them. Let's look at a couple key listening skills. Listen attentively. Now this sounds a little interesting, but have you ever, especially with our cell phones today, as we're talking to someone and we're talking away and talking away and talking away and we don't hear anything? And it's like, can you hear me now? Are you still there? Have you, almost every week I know I'm asking that question when I'm on the phone. Are you still there? Because I didn't hear anything back. A good listener gives clues that they're still on the line. A good listener is saying, oh yeah, oh okay, wow, that's neat. So even anything to say you're still engaged. Yeah, isn't that a simple rule? It's a simple tool, but it says I'm still with you, I'm still listening. I heard what you were saying. How about with curiosity, where you're saying, it's like if you're hiking and I love to go over the top of a mountain because I don't know what's on the other side. I'm anxious to turn around, go around a bend because there might be a lake around there. And as we're talking to somebody, as we're listening to them, it's like, wow, there's more information. I'm interested in learning a little bit more. I'm going to go around their bend of history. I'm going to go over their hill of the story they're telling me and learn more. But so often we say, okay, I've heard enough from them, let me tell you my story. Instead of, wow, I bet there's another bend around the corner. I bet there's some more information. I want to learn more about it. Can you give me an example of what you mean? I want to dig in deeper. I'm curious. Does that seem to reflect the character of God? He says, tell me more about you. I want to know. Listen reflectively. I'm reflecting on what I'm hearing. Am I hearing you say this? I think this is what I'm hearing you say. Now, when I do that, maybe sometimes they'll say, no, that's not what I said at all. That was important. If I just went on and had the wrong picture of what they were saying, I wouldn't be connecting with them, would I? So making sure I understand what they're saying. So you feel like this. It sounds as if, here's what I'm hearing you say so far. Those are important things to be asking as we're listening. We're reflecting what they are saying. Silence. A good rule to ask yourself when there's silence, or isn't silence, I should say, is remember the wait. Why am I talking when I should be listening? Solomon, and several times in this instruction, we will go and look at what the wisest man said about these subjects. But one thing the wisest man said is, a man of knowledge uses words with restraint. Isn't talking all the time, it sounds like. A man of understanding is even-tempered. Even a fool is thought wise if he keeps silent. And discerning if he holds his tongue. In fact, Abe Lincoln said, why not be silent and be thought a fool than opening your mouth and removing all doubt? So sometimes being silent is going to make us look even better.